Pops in a pod. Pops in a pod.
Welcome to Pops in a Pod. Peter Pop here.
And I am Nadir Pop.
We're back with part 2 of The Science of Dads with Dr. Rakesh Kapur.
Dr. Rakesh Kapur, a management consultant and the director of NGO BambooTree, spoke to us about the research they have done with dads specifically. He shared with us the biological changes that happen in a man's body while his wife is pregnant, and men also get morning sickness. That was very intriguing, wasn't it, Peter?
Yeah, honestly, I was really surprised when I heard that. But in addition to that, Dr. Rakesh also spoke about the importance of a father in raising a child. And you know what was also interesting is we actually found out why there was not much research on dads available prior to this.
Do check out part 1 of The Science of Dads if you haven't already. Trust me, it will open up a whole new box on parenting for you guys.
And now here's part 2 of our chat with Dr. Rakesh Kapur.
So, Doc, it's very interesting that you brought it up because we wanted to kind of understand, not just from a scientific standpoint on fatherhood or being a dad, but today, people like you and, Peter and I are exposed to so much information, books, obviously Google, there's so many things happening. And this is something that we've noticed that because we read so many things and so much information on parenting and children and otherwise relationships, so on and so forth, at some point either it triggers us or we just read it and we are like, okay, to each his own, whatever that they do, let them kind of sort of manage that. On a slightly more larger scale, have you seen changes taking place where father is playing a very, very active role?
Definitely. I mean, one of the things which is true about India is that it starts off very late, but it catches up very fast. So that's what we have actually been able to see. So what I mean by that is that the involvement of fathers in the other countries started much quicker, but Indians have taken on to that role in a very fast way. So there is this amazing lady called Dr. Raj Lakshmi from Baroda University. She's done some amazing research on Indian fathers, and she's done some amazing research on especially fathers where, in the armed forces, because they are living separately also, right? And they sometimes have those non-family postings and things like that. So one of the things, let me put it across, what data shows us and what observation. Data and observations are two very different this thing. Observation can still go into some anecdotal thing. Data cannot. Data is, sacrosanct. So what we are seeing, one is that, of course, the attendance in school PTMs has gone up significantly. So in early 2000s or late 1990s, about 10% of the fathers used to attend it, right? Now it is approximately 40% of the fathers are attending it. In urban metros, almost 80% are attending school activities, which is happening, right? The average amount of time that the fathers spend with their children. So that is coming from our own research, which we have done, which is available on our channel and everywhere. So what we are finding is Indian fathers on an average spend between 64 to 70 hours per month with their children, right? Now, but the good part is almost 50% of the fathers are spending more than 80 hours with their children, right? Now, which compares extremely well with Western countries in the US, because in US, the average is anywhere between 80 and 120, depending on which country and state that you go to, 80 to 120 hours per month, right? So those we're seeing that's what data actually tells us. But one of the very interesting things, other things which we are seeing is, see, there are 6 roles that both Dr. Raj Lakshmi has absolutely defined, which are very beautifully defined roles, right? So, things like being a provider, being a nurturer, being a provider, nurturer, then a communicator and a guide and a mentor, right? Having shared activities, These are all academic terms. So you are having shared activities of taking the children out for a movie or things like that, right? So there are 6 such roles which are there. The only place where we feel that the fathers, sometimes in India specifically, are doing much less work is the practical everyday care, right? Which is to say, but that also, so we are seeing now 95% of the fathers in India, data shows, has changed the diapers and the nappies of the children, right? More than 35 to 40% of the fathers cook meals for their children all across India, right? And one of the things which came from this amazing study of Flipkart, right? So they came up with the Penguin Dad study, which is available online. So what they said was that almost 50% of the fathers that they surveyed, this was, of course, urban metro cities, 50% of the fathers wanted to be stay-at-home dads. The question or the problem that comes to is, how would you as a society allow them to be? How would you look at a father who is a stay-at-home dad, right? Is that somebody whom you would, for a lack of better word, respect as much, or do you feel, no, there is an issue here?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, and this is kind of interesting, right? Because one of our guests that we had in June was a stay-at-home dad, and he made that transition kind of seamlessly because he also was running his own business. But just to kind of recap that story, while you were talking about, what society and what everyone else would think, his own mother was like, can you manage it? And he so well said that she wasn't concerned about me. She was more concerned about the children because he was going to have twins. So it's kind of interesting. And, we've been talking, like when we started off the podcast, we always wanted to talk about, to a stay-at-home dad. I remember the campaign by Flipkart in there. And then comes March 2020 and everyone's a stay-at-home dad. Then obviously social media took over and everyone started posting pictures. And I saw that over the last 18 months, right? Because initially, your work and your house were 2 very distinct things. For the first time, they kind of collided. And through Zoom calls or Google Meet calls, whatever you were doing, you actually had a peek into people's personal lives, which a lot of people were not comfortable with. But it's reached a stage where now, my son will come into a Zoom call and say hi to everyone, and it's perfectly fine because they understand that's just how things are. Tell me about what it's like in terms of if you've seen both, observational data or just like statistics, right? And Nader and I can chime in with our experiences. Where you talked about, your parent-teacher meetings where dads are involved. You talked about this. As a society, how is that being accepted, right? Because there's one thing is the willingness for the dad to be involved in the activities. But, and there's no other way to put it out there, right? Is other mothers or other people in the parent-teacher meetings, associations and all, are they willing to accept more involved dads?
Yeah, no, that's one of the obvious issues which we call to barriers to fathering. So what we really are seeing is that fathers wish to be part of it. They want to be, so they walk in, but they feel extremely unwelcome in a very large percentage of schools. So what a lot of fathers are relating their experience. So I remember one of the, when we were doing some amount of research on this, as interviewing about hundreds of fathers on this. So one of them clearly stated that, he walked in for the first time, I think his child was about 6 or 7, right? And into the parent-teacher meeting, went and sat down in front of the teacher with the child. And all the teacher asked him was, where is the mother? Right? Now, I mean, the guy was absolutely taken aback by simply saying, I'm here, right? Talk to me about whatever this thing is. But there is this huge, there is this discomfort because you wouldn't even know about what's happening. Unfortunately, what we are seeing is a so what we are seeing, and that's what, again, that's not a very hard-coded data, but we are seeing that at least about 60% of parents, fathers, are highly involved in teaching and extracurricular activities of the child, right? But the teachers are not accepting the fact they will always tend to. So let's say, even if you walk in with your wife to the school, where do you see the teacher? Who is she looking at while she's talking? Is she looking at the mother, or is she looking at you as a father? Right. So there are these huge challenges, so like I call it, just the way women complain a lot about glass ceiling in the corporate world. There is a huge glass ceiling for men in the parenting world.
No, Doc, I'm glad that you brought it up, because this is and I'd like to share my experience also, because I'm one of those dads who's completely involved in my daughter's education, to the extent that even if she has to take whatever extra classes, if she's free, she wants to do something, I'm sort of there. My wife will help find out what these classes are, and we'll discuss, and we'll come to the conclusion then that, okay, I think this is the appropriate class that she can go to. But I'm sitting there not because I'm fulfilling my parental duties, because I enjoy it. I enjoy sitting with my daughter, seeing how she absorbs all that information, right? Like how she's adding numbers, how she's figuring out with her tiny fingers how to count, and that's just a very enjoyable experience. Like, I have cancelled meetings just so that I can sit with her and see what she does, because it's just very fascinating that I have a little human being, a little person in the house, as opposed to a little child, and I'm getting to witness, how she's growing, how she's absorbing simple, basic information that she will require in the world, in her life. But coming back
Father,
to...
sorry, may I just interrupt you there and ask you a very quick question? Since both of
Yes,
you are
please.
involved fathers, when you took your child to nursery, right, for the first day at school, did you see your child rebel? Did you see your child say, "No, I don't want to go. I want to go back home"? Tell me your experience.
Yeah, my daughter cried. She cried a lot, because I think she felt abandoned. I think she felt really abandoned, that, oh, we are, and what happened was that, because we were dropping her at a play group, right, and we went to somebody else's house for that, she felt that, okay, this is not a professional setup. This looks like somebody's house. Are they like parceling me off? And this really sweet Parsi auntie, and taking care of other kids and all of that. And she was just bawling and bawling, and I was like, it's okay, we'll come back, and I just ran down the stairs. So yeah,
Peter, did that happen to you? No, because I'm going to, obviously there is a reason I'm asking you that question, right? So yeah.
No, the same. I think, like, there are two parts to it also, right? Because my son went to a playgroup nursery for the entire time, I think from the age 2 or so. And it was a struggle. Like that first, like I would say, couple of months. They say that, it takes 2 weeks, 3 weeks. We had to kind of slowly ease him into it. Then he got so used to it. And then COVID happened, right? And I still remember, like, people were just starting to use Zoom. And I'll never forget this, because it traumatized both my wife and me. We put on the Zoom call and we were like, hey, these are your teachers, these are your friends. And he saw them and he just like broke down and he ran away. And I'll never forget, he said that, you're sending me away. I don't want to leave mommy and daddy. And we were like, no, we're not sending you away. But then, we now understood, like many months later, that he saw them. So he thought that he's going to be apart from us. And that was really unsettling, right? Because you think that, your child is in his place, he really enjoys, but just that like month and a half that he spent bonding with us, he didn't want to leave us.
I also feel, Dr. Kapur, that the kids feel that the parents are going to be around for life. And I think human species is the only species that sort of nurtures a child to a certain age and so on and so forth, right? I mean, I'm sorry, I might not be able to articulate my wealth in scientific terms, but I feel maybe that's one thing. And what I have inferred from that is that the child feels कि हाँ मम्मी पापा और हम सब चीज साथ में करेंगे, right? That because so I feel even school they must be like, हाँ okay, come, where is your bag? Why are you not sitting? And then suddenly we're just turning away and going, right? Like, hey, what the hell? You can't do that. You also have to sit in school. So I feel there's that some wiring or something that comes from somewhere.
Now, I think what an amazing experiences you guys are sharing. So let me just, one of the ways that we measure, so we've been able to in pop science, and that's how I say it in pop science, not in academia, right? Would be how we measure, so how the father's involvement impacts the IQ, EQ, SQ, and life expectancy of the child, right? IQ being intelligence quotient, EQ being emotional quotient, SQ social quotient, and life expectancy, right? So one of the ways that we measure EQ is the school readiness of the child at the age of 3 or 4, right? Because that is what is the executive functions of the brain look like, right? Because see, for a child to be able to attend school means he or she should be able to sit in the class for about 30 45 minutes quietly, right? Listen to instructions, absorb that information, ask questions. It's then that the child becomes involved. And what is we are seeing across the world is children who have fathers involved have much higher EQ, that is much better school readiness at the age of 4. They tend to cry much lesser. They tend to, because, like somebody, one of the things again, which brings me to, we keep shifting between topics, but I think that's all right, is what it brings me to is, so one of the persons quoted it beautifully. One of the child, she was about 9 or 10, and they asked her, what is the difference between the mother and the father? She says, when I'm playing a game and I get hurt, my mother is great at comforting me, right? But my father is who gets me back in the game. Are you seeing? So that's the huge difference, that we are seeing happening across this thing. So that's again what research has been able to show, that school readiness is one of the major executive functions that we measure for children and their ability to do that. But you said it, I think, very beautifully when you said in which other race is, for 1/3 or 1/4 of the child's life, that is almost 18, there is no goddamn animal on this planet who takes care of the children for 1/3 or 1/4 of their life, 30%, right? So, but there is a very, very severe reason, scientific reason for that. And that is the reason which has caused us to dominate over planet Earth. So evolutionary biologists will tell you that one of the major reasons we dominate over planet Earth is because we practice dual parenthood. And only 5% of the mammals in the animal kingdom practice dual parenthood. 95%, they don't have invested fathers, only the mother takes care of it. But let's see if you guys can take a wild guess why that is, because that's a very interesting story. I have a feeling you and your viewers may love it.
Wow.
Take a wild guess.
This is something I didn't expect on this episode. But okay, this is a shot in the dark. But I guess it has to do just with the overall development, right? So whether it is mental, physical in there, one parent wouldn't be enough. And I mean, of course, like there is a debate to be had of the evolutionary process and things like that. But if we're just kind of keeping all things equal, I would say that's one of the things about human babies, right? That you need like two to kind of bring the child up. Nadir?
I don't know. I think I would like to go with the gender role aspect, where the female has a set of, I don't know, sorry, lack of a better term, but set of duties, and the male has a certain set of duties. And I think both those experiences have to be ingrained into the child, irrespective of their gender. So maybe that's one way of looking at it. Like the whole hunter-gatherer thing, men go and hunt, women go and provide, stuff like that. I don't know.
Now, I think that's brilliantly said. Both of you were very much, without the scientific, I think both of you were amazingly bang on to the this thing. Though, I would, not me, but science disagrees with what Nadir said. There are no defined roles. Okay, there is a certain amount of this thing, but there is a huge amount of flexibility. But the reason is this, right? And this is an interesting story. So one of the things I look at it is, one of the famous statements that I appear tall because I'm standing on the shoulders of giants who came before me, right? That's one of the, now, which is the most important truth of why humans dominate, because we are the only species which is able to build upon previous generations' knowledge base and build upon it and move ahead, right? Which brings us to the fact that when a child is born, a human child is born, I'm sorry to say this, and I love them, but they are the most useless things on this planet. They can't even hold their heads still, right? They can't even hold their heads still, right? Now, that is not true for any other mammal or any other animal, right? In fact, we have a gestation period, what we call, for 9 months, the pregnancy that is there, right? For human children to be as developed as, let's say, a chimpanzee's children, the gestation period would have had to be 18 to 21 months, right? For the human brain to be developed. Because what differentiates us is the human brain, which is the ratio of human brain weight to the body weight is probably the best in humans. It is 1:40. Let's say for dogs, it is 1:125, 1:125. For horses, it is 1:600, right? So now try and imagine. So now comes the interesting part, which is to say, now try and imagine getting that sized brain out of the birth canal or the vagina. How big will the birth canal or the vagina have to be to get even a 700-gram weight out, right? So the nature had only two choices at the end of the day. What it could do was either increase the size of the birth canal or provide two parents so as to take care of the child, right? Either increase the size of the birth canal so that the child can come out, or have two parents who can take care of the child for a longer period. The moment that nature would increase the size of the birth canal or the pelvis, right? You can't walk on two legs. You'll have to be four-legged creatures, because the weight of that pelvis cannot be taken care of by the legs which are there, right? But one of the most beautiful things that we simply state is nature, God, whatever name you want to call it, hates redundancy. Why create two copies of the same thing? Therefore, the two parents that they created were extremely different. So one of the other things that I will ask you now, after this monologue, would be to ask you a question. Do you notice any difference between the way you talk to your children versus how your wife talks to the child?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think there are multiple reasons for that also, right? I mean, and I keep bringing back the fact that you see your parents' parenting styles, right? So very unconsciously you reflect on that. And I've noticed that with me, right? Like you very unconsciously, it's something maybe you hated about your parents, but it's something that, those taunting lines that they said to you and all, whether you like it or not, it's so like ingrained in you that you'll say it. So that tends to happen. But yeah, I think it is very distinct. And the way I look at it is that my wife and I have very different personalities. There's very different styles of the way we function and do things. So yeah, very differently when it comes to our parenting styles also.
So in my case, it's a little more. Again, we are very planned parents, so for us to really, agree on a certain aspect of parenting, whatever it is, whether it's chastising our child for doing something wrong or whatever it is, there are certain rules, right? So my wife can be pretty tough if the daughter is doing something wrong, right? And I also have to maintain that tone, because both of us, we've realized that we can't be the good parent and the bad parent. We don't want to play that role, right? I can't be the fun parent, like every time she gets yelled at by the mother, she comes running to me. And I think that's very unfair to my wife as well. So we have decided very clearly that if she's done something wrong, she needs to know from both the parents that she's done something wrong. But I think predominantly I'm the softer parent, because I think naturally only it just comes to me and says, okay, it's fine. And then, as soon as I see my parents, and I'm like, why did you do that? Why would you do that? Right? But so it happens. It happens, and she tends to sort of oscillate towards me when there's a problem, but she knows she gets it. She gets it from me and my wife, both, because that's how we've sort of trained ourselves that this is how we are going to parent our child.
Very interesting. I would love for you to now go back whenever go back into your lives and look at the language that you use, right? So one of the things that we see is, and this is again experiments which have happened all across the world, and this is, surprisingly universal across all cultures. It holds true whether you are in Africa, Australia, or Russia, for that matter, right? That the mothers tend to use a lot more of baby talk while talking to their children, right? So they would use, the words, the infamous words of Sona, how are you doing, Chwito, things like that a lot more, right? While fathers, till 1 year only, when the child is 1 year, they use this baby talk. After that, they shift to a much more adult and a mature talk, which is they ask a lot more of who, why, how, those kind of questions, right? Now, what the scientists have been able to find is that since the fathers tend to do that, their children are motivated, activated, or challenged to respond back to fathers in their language and a more engaging content, which helps in very significant development of language skills in children or communication skills in children, a very, very high level of this thing, which is why they have found that children with invested fathers tend to have a much higher social quotient. They tend to have far more number of friends. They tend to be a little more available with other their peer group, right? So they tend to be a little more. So that's one of the other things that they found. But very interestingly, what Nadir said. So how do you play with your children? Is there a difference in the way you and your wife play with children differently?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's one thing I started realizing last year, right? When we were at home, because my son was cooped up and normally we take him to the park or do stuff like that. We realized that, him just being on the phone is not going to do any good, right? And it's not going to kind of help. So that's where I had to kind of regularly, take out time, buy a football. We'd play at home, much to my wife's dismay. So we'd have to hide all the stuff that can break in there. But we'd kind of play or take him out on the cycle in there, because I enjoy sports, right? And I didn't want him to feel that, he cannot go out. And I keep bringing this up, right? Last year wasn't easy for anyone to be cooped up at home, and we could rationalize things with the kids. It wasn't that easy, right? Nadir?
Again, I think over here, I also sort of give in to the societal trope of, the father does the physical activities far more compared to the mother. But that's also because I have also been a pretty physical kid, constantly playing, and whether it's cricket, football, some sport or the other. And because I have a daughter, I don't want to create any distinction. So I play various sports. So, with the small ball, I'll try and play cricket with her. With the big ball, obviously football or whatever, catch, whatever that she's interested in. And I'm very proud of the fact that I taught my daughter how to catch a ball. My wife has a more intellectual bent, even when it comes to playing, right? She wants my daughter to know certain definitions, whether it's words or colors or shapes or whatever it is. So even when they are playing, they try and she tries to kind of push her on that intellectual aspect of things, where she's required to remember certain things. So even if you're going in the car, if the speed limit is written on the signpost, my daughter will recognize the number, but then my wife will explain to her, what is that number? Why is that number randomly there on the road? So I think she takes a slightly more intellectual path, whereas I'm more on the slightly physical side of things, where I teach her how to do pull-ups, lift your own body weight and things like that. So yeah, that's how we sort of segregate our playing style also.
So let me break it to you. It's not a societal role. That's biologically how you're programmed. So it's not something that. So this is what we've found across all cultures. Again, is that fathers engage in a lot of what we call as rough and tumble play. The most famous sight of a father is the father throwing the child up in the air, right, and bringing it back, right, which mothers freak out over, right? They say, how can you do this? And things like that, right? Now, so let me give you the reason for that. Is this because it is this kind of physical and rough and tumble play which increases the oxytocin level in fathers. And oxytocin is responsible for happiness, right? It is responsible for bringing happiness. In fact, that's one of the reasons why, which we could just immediately after take off, is why we recommend a large amount more of paternal leave, because the fathers need to spend physical time doing this. And what we found is this rough and tumble play, when the child just, let's say, is just thrown up in the air and plays all of this. What they found was that the children who go through these kind of activities with the father learn risk identification much earlier. They're able to understand, how much I need to fall, where I need to fall, and how, right? They are able to, they are more risk-taking. In today's world, the ability to be able to take calculated risk is what defines success, right? They are able to take such kind of risks much quicker, right? And very importantly, what it does is it builds a certain high degree of trust that even if I fall, I have somebody who can take care of me. And trust is one of the most important things for any human child to really blossom or move into the world. So in a way, it's an extremely and really good thing. Please continue with this rough and tumble play. It is something that defines you as fathers, and you must continue and encourage it even more. Yeah, I'm sorry, I will become probably the biggest enemy in your wives' lives, because I'm providing you with information which may not sit too well with them. Yeah.
But I'm glad you brought this up, Doctor, and I want to combine two aspects to it, right? Because you talked about paternity leave, and Nader and I did an entire episode on it, right? And there are multiple ways you can look at it. I mean, one is, oh my God, why do dads need so much leave? Blah 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 blah. The other aspect is in companies, and that's what we noticed in our research that we came across, where there was paternity leave or just generally leave that's available, right? People weren't taking it because there was that kind of fear in there. And let's not beat around the bush, right? At the end of the day, how many Indian dads can kind of go up to their boss and say, you know what, I want to spend 6 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever time is there, and I'm going to take it because it's part of the thing. There's always that fear there. There's always that kind of stereotype. So that's one aspect I want to talk to you about, why dad should take the paternity leave. But the second aspect I want you to kind of look at is why it's important, right? Because those initial time that you spend with your kid is very important. So what's the kind of impact that you have seen through research on dads being involved in there, right? Or we've always focused on just like the kids, but what's the impact that happens on the dads? If you could kind of talk about that would be great.
No, I think, to answer your first part, I think the simple answer is we all understand that there is in career what we call is well known as the motherhood penalty, right? Because we typically do see mothers, falling back in their career progression once they become mothers, and they lose those 2 to 3 years is typically the penalty, which. But the thing is, obviously, that's a societal thing. Why people don't take leaves is because motherhood penalty is well accepted in the society. People do not. But so just try and imagine you at 40 or 45, let's say, were going to be the CEO of the company. But imagine if you remain as a vice president at 40, 45. If you take that fatherhood penalty, which typically comes in, it's far more acceptable for mothers, while it is not so acceptable for fathers, is how I look at it. But why they should, I think, to answer you. So like I mentioned just a few minutes back, what we are seeing in research all across the world is that the father-child interaction is not unidirectional. That means it's not just that the child benefits significantly from it. The significant benefit that we are seeing even in the fathers comes biologically from one clear cut, that is the oxytocin level going up, which increases productivity, right? So actually, if you were to walk into your boss's office, right, and he gets the feeling and the understanding that this person is definitely going to come back after those 3 or 6 months of paternity leave as a 10 times more productive person and will be able to do it much better, they will definitely be much happier to do it. This is a direct biological benefit that we are seeing. But the indirect benefit that we are actually seeing is, so almost about 30% of fathers who were involved with their children, right? They left smoking. 40% of the fathers left drinking during this point of time, as long as they were involved with their children, right? So that brings in a huge amount of health benefit for the father, and which in fact translates into significant benefit for the organization. And lastly, what we are seeing is the benefit around that the retention of employees who have taken paternity leave is about 3 times more. So those are the clear-cut reasons why fathers do need to take the paternity leave, and organizations do need to bring in far greater amount of paternity leave. In fact, I think just about a week back, Finland has, based on all of this research, has made 164 days of paternity leave compulsory for both mothers and for fathers. Yeah, so that's also happening. But yeah, a lot of data has gone into showing that much higher productivity and much higher happiness that we are seeing. And of course, the advantages for the children and the society. If I were to just talk about advantages for the children and the society in general, it'll take me another 2 episodes to do that.
Yeah.
No, but Doc, thank you so much. You've actually given us so much to think about, and as you rightly said, that we will need at least a couple more episodes to really get down to this, the whole aspect of parenting, looking at from a father's perspective. I mean, I wish we would have met you earlier in the initial episodes of Pops in a Pod. I think we would have set it up very nicely. But nevertheless, we are glad that we've met you. Any last words or any last pointers that you want to give to wrap up this whole aspect of how fatherhood, being a dad, is so crucial? I mean, yes, we've spoken so much, but if you had to just give a few parting thoughts, what would those thoughts be?
See, as I said, I try and stay away from opinion and observations. I'm a science guy. I try and talk science because I truly believe, like they say, in God, I believe. For everybody else, please provide data, right? Kind of a thing, right? There was a time, my parting sentence would be, there was a time when it used to be said that the best thing that a father could do was to pamper and be nice to the mother, right? All science today has now shifted to this thing which says that if there is one greatest predictor of success of a child, when the child is born, one greatest predictor, and this is scientifically true, that is that the child has two parents or not. And they have taken away all impact of money that could happen. Economically deprived people obviously will not be successful. So they took away all those factors and they said, what is that one thing which will predict success? And that is, does this child have an involved father and mother? So in fact, those would be my parting thoughts and comments.
Okay. And I know we said those were your parting thoughts, but I'm sure everything that you've said has left people curious. They want to read more, watch more YouTube videos, listen to more of such kind of research that you've done, right? How can they find you? If you can just drop a few links, that would be great. We'll also add it in the show notes, of course.
Absolutely. Now, so what I'm going to do is, if you guys are okay with this, Peter and Nadir, I will send you the links to 3 books which I feel that all fathers should read, right? And these are not books about real parenting, saying, what is parenting? How should you parent? Because every parent is different. But this is about really the science that I spoke about. So all the experiments and this thing, there are at least about 20 more experiments which we could have spoken about, which we obviously constrained by time. Those 3 books is something that I would really encourage each one of you to read. I don't want to give you links to much of these scientific articles because I think 9 out of 10 viewers will be lost while reading them. If I tell you that the amygdala is activated in the mother, while the neocortex is activated in the father, what does that mean is not going to be exactly, right? So I would much rather put it down as 3 books, very beautifully, very layman's language written. Do read about it. And I think how you can find me, I have my YouTube channel, which is called BambooTree Children's Foundation. It's a relatively new channel. We've put in a lot of our research findings on that in shape of videos. Just the way Peter and Nadir are talking to me, I talk to a number of international experts on that. We are having 3 or 4. The interview has been done. We're just going to upload it over the next week or so more. So similar such things, please do look that up. And if that helps, I think that'll be great.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kapur, for spending 2 hours almost with us on a Sunday. So, firstly, apologies to your wife. So please do convey the same. And you've given us so much to think about, and we would love to have more such conversations of different aspects of parenting and society and media in general. So once again, thank you very much for this, and hopefully we'll connect again.
Peter, this is the main reason I think we split this episode into 2, because there was so much of information that Dr. Rakesh was giving us that I think it would be injustice to bunk in all of that in just one episode. And I think it made so much sense, and I'm glad we made this decision that we split it into 2 parts.
Totally. One thing, I'm really glad that we did it, because this episode is not just something that to-be dads or recent dads will benefit from, right? But also people who are like us, been dads for a while, they'll also learn something new. And that's something I guess we really enjoy doing at Pops in a Pod.
Absolutely. And on this note, let's hope that more such scientific discoveries or research on parenting, especially where fathers are concerned, takes place, and we get to hear it on Pops in a Pod so that we can share it with new parents, potential parents, and even older parents. I think even they should know about the science of dads.
True. So as always, you can reach out to us at popsinapod@gmail.com. Visit our website, popsinapod. If this is the first time you're listening to episodes, welcome. And we've got 104 more episodes that you can definitely check out.
Thank you so much, guys, for being patient with us. And hopefully you took away something valuable from our discussion with Dr. Kapur. So as usual, until next week, we will see you with another fresh episode. So stay tuned.
See you then.